Supreme at Max Pro Northern Cement, Ahon, Bangon, Sulong, and SMC Global Power.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. On tonight's headlines. President Joe Biden said he will survey the tornado damage in Kentucky on Wednesday after a swarm of tornadoes swept through 6 U.S. states. Eliza Gonzalez Manglikmont will give us the details. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged China to cease aggressive actions in the Indo-Pacific, speaking during a visit to the region as Washington seeks to bolster alliances against Beijing. Meanwhile, President Duterte reiterated that he continues to regard China as a good friend, even if some do not share his sentiments. He, however, clarified that the Philippine sovereign rights over the West Philippine Sea would not be compromised. And the NFL reported 37 positive COVID tests across the league on Monday. According to ESPN, the largest single-day number of positive cases since the pandemic began. First in our news, President Joe Biden said he will survey the tornado damage in Kentucky on Wednesday after a swarm of it swept through 6 U.S. states. Eliza Gonzalez Manglikmont reports from Washington, D.C.
Line with. Thanks, Alma. President Joe Biden is set to visit Kentucky on Wednesday after tornadoes ravaged parts of the state and killed dozens of people. The president will survey damage in the devastated towns of Mayfield and Dawson Springs.
I said I intend to travel to Kentucky on Wednesday, and with each passing day, the human impact of this devastation is the depth of the losses are becoming more and more apparent.
Emergency responders are still picking through the rubble of thousands of damaged or destroyed homes and buildings. 3 days after the disaster hit, officials are still struggling to establish a final death toll. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear cautions that the number of fatalities may reach 70 or even 80. The tornadoes killed people across 4 other states: Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri, and Illinois. Meanwhile, President Biden has declared that a major disaster exists in the Commonwealth of Kentucky and orders federal aid to supplement the Commonwealth and local recovery efforts in the areas affected by severe storms, straight-line winds, flooding, and tornadoes beginning on December 10, 2021 and continuing. Assistance can include grants for temporary housing and home repairs, low-cost loans to cover uninsured property losses, and other programs to help individuals and business owners recover from the effects of the disaster. In Washington, Eliza Gonzalez Manglikmont, Eagle News International. Back to you, Alma.
Thank you, Eliza. Meanwhile, Kentucky officials are voicing relief Monday that dozens of workers at a candle factory appear to have survived tornadoes that killed dozens and left a trail of devastation across 6 U.S. states. Governor Andy Beshear said 74 deaths have been confirmed in the southeastern state and choked up as he told reporters the fatalities ranged in age from 5 months old to 86. Again, let's listen in.
Apparently right. We just confirmed that the Hopkins County 17 deaths is accurate, and that's where we're up to. So that's one miracle we did not get. 74 lost Kentuckians as of now, and that number is going to grow. So if dealing with all this isn't enough, we have a pandemic. It's continuing, and it's continuing to take lives of Kentuckians.
Now, 14 deaths have been reported in 4 other states hit by the twisters: Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri, and Illinois. There was also damage, though no deaths in Mississippi. 6 people were killed at an Amazon warehouse in the southern Illinois city of Edwardsville, where workers were on the night shift, processing orders ahead of the holidays. Gemma Ryan Hart was working at the Mayfield Consumer Products Candle Factory in Mayfield, Kentucky, when the tornado tornado destroyed his workplace on December 10. The 21-year-old spent 7 hours trapped under the rubble alongside dozens of colleagues until rescuers reached him. Let's listen to him.
I'm happy to be alive, honestly. I mean, everybody's angry with the fact that, like, we didn't get a warning, we didn't get an opportunity to stay home besides if we decided to do that. But that could have been points accounted for us for not showing up to work. It was really scary, really painful. Walls, cinder blocks, metal, wood, everything just crushing you. It was like the building, the more we waited, the building like settled in more and more on top of us. So it was like you went from being able to wiggle just a little bit at the beginning to not being able to move at all. Everything just pinning you down, just waiting on help, trying to control your breathing. That's what everybody kept.
A massive search effort is underway at the candle factory, which was left a twisted ruin by the force of the powerful winds. Storm trackers said it had lofted debris 30,000 feet into the air, and the Mayfield twister appeared to have broken an almost century-old record, tracking on the ground more than 200 miles. Mayfield, a town of about 10,000 near the westernmost tip of Kentucky, was perhaps the hardest hit community. City blocks were leveled, historic homes and buildings were beaten down to their slabs, tree trunks had been stripped of their branches, and cars lay overturned in fields. Officials said 26,500 Kentucky customers remained without power. Meanwhile, rescuers continue to search the rubble of the collapsed Mayfield Consumer Products candle factory following the deadly tornadoes in the U.S. state of Kentucky. Let's listen in.
We're still looking at this as a rescue effort, so every time that goes by and the temperatures that dip low in the 30s and high 20s at night is critical to make sure that we get to those individuals that still may be entrapped in that building. So the roof collapsed, so we're working to not only cut the steel structure, then the crane will be picking that steel components out and then removing them to create additional void spaces so that we can get search canines in there to run that area that's been opened up for them to see if there's anyone that's still there. We're going to systematically go through this building until we have concrete on the ground and there's nothing left remaining on the concrete. Then we can say that 100% assurance that we've searched every inch of this structure.
Operations. What are the chances you'll find somebody alive at this point?
We don't know that right now.
To Indonesia now, where a 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck the eastern Indonesia on Tuesday, according to the USGS, causing panic, but no deaths or major damage were reported. The epicenter was in the Flores Sea, north of East Nusa Tenggara province, where the quake sparked terror after hitting in the late morning, 03:20 GMT. Significant damage or fatalities were immediately reported, but Indonesian authorities urged caution with more than a dozen smaller aftershocks detected. One person was injured in Manggarai, East Nusa Tenggara, and a school building was damaged on Selayar Island, according to National Disaster Agency spokesman Abdul Muhari in a statement. He also said the impact of the quake was still being assessed. The intensity of the shaking sparked panic in many areas, with videos from some towns and villages shared on social media showing people running outside, some holding small children. Streets were seen clogged with traffic as vehicles attempted to leave for safe locations. The USGS placed the epicenter at a depth of 18.5 kilometers, around 100 kilometers north of the Flores Island town of Maumere, home to more than 80,000 people where the quake disrupted coronavirus inoculations. Thousands in Momere sought safety on higher ground, fearing a tsunami. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center said the quake no longer posed a threat of tsunamis after earlier warning that such waves were possible within a 1,000-kilometer radius of the epicenter. Indonesian authorities also lifted their tsunami warning. The Philippine Coast Guard has begun the deployment of its troops and assets as the country braces for Tropical Storm Rai that will be named Odette once it enters the Philippine area of responsibility tonight. In a Facebook post, PCG Commandant Admiral Leopoldo Laroya directed several PCG districts, stations, and substations to prepare for evacuations, rescue operations, and relief missions in coordination with local government units. Laroya has specifically instructed PCG units in the Caraga and Western Visayas regions to immediately activate their deployable response groups and quick response teams, as well as inspect their available search and rescue assets and equipment. In response to the directive, the PCG said all its vessels that are ready for sail have been tasked to take shelter, while station and substation commanders in affected areas are preparing for the issuance of appropriate maritime safety advisories to the public. The National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council, or NDRRMC, earlier said over 10,000 barangays in the Visayas and Mindanao and some areas in southern Luzon are likely to be affected once Odette makes a landfall. The United Nations on Tuesday officially recognized the 38 degrees Celsius measured in Siberia last year as a new record high for the Arctic, sounding alarm bells over climate change. Let's listen in.
The World Meteorological Organization has this morning recognized a temperature of 38 degrees Celsius, which in Fahrenheit is a staggering 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit in the Russian town of Verkhoyansk. It was recorded last year, so the 20th of June 2020, and we've recognized it as a new Arctic record.
This new Arctic record is one of a series of observations reported to the WMO Archive of Weather and Climate Extremes that sound the alarm bells about the changing climate, according to its chief, Petteri Talas, said in a statement. Verkhoyansk lies about 115 kilometers or 70 miles north of the Arctic Circle, and temperatures have been measured there since 1885. Strong tropical depression Ruby hits Nomia in the French Pacific island of New Caledonia, bringing heavy rains and flooding the city streets with wind gusts reaching 185 kilometers per hour. The cyclone is expected to intensify further and become a Category 3 as it moves over New Caledonia on Tuesday. On its current forecast track, Ruby is expected to bring gale to storm force winds, heavy rain and high waves to much of New Caledonia. The system is expected to pass close to the main island on Tuesday, lying 85 kilometers northeast of Nomia by Tuesday evening. Natural catastrophes and extreme weather events caused around $250 billion in damage this year, an increase of 24% over the previous year. The world's biggest reinsurer, Swiss Re, estimated today. For the insurance industry alone, extreme weather events, including a deep winter freeze, floods, severe thunderstorms, heat waves, and a major hurricane, resulted in annual insured losses from natural catastrophes estimated at $105 billion, the fourth highest since 1970, according to the insurance in a statement. The two costliest natural disasters of the year were both recorded in the U.S. Hurricane Ida wreaked $30 to $32 billion in estimated insured damages, including flooding in New York. And Winter Storm Uri, which brought extreme cold and heavy snowfall that caused power grid failures in Texas, caused $15 billion in insured losses. The costliest event in Europe was the flooding in Germany, Belgium, and nearby countries in July, which caused $40 billion in economic losses and $30 billion in insured losses. In addition to natural catastrophes, man-made disasters caused $9 billion in economic losses, a decline of 38% from the previous year, and $7 billion in insured losses, down 24% year on year. To other news now, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged China to cease aggressive actions in the Indo-Pacific, speaking during a visit to the region as Washington seeks to bolster alliances against Beijing. Take a look.
The goal of defending the rules-based order is not to keep any country down. Rather, it's to protect the right of all countries to choose their own path, free from coercion, free from intimidation. It's not about a contest between a U.S.-centric region or a China-centric region. The Indo-Pacific is its own region. Rather, it's about upholding the rights and agreements that are responsible for the most peaceful and prosperous period this region and the world has ever experienced. That's why there's so much concern from Northeast Asia to Southeast Asia and from the Mekong River to the Pacific Islands about Beijing's aggressive actions, claiming open seas as their own, distorting open markets through subsidies to its state-run companies, denying the exports or revoking deals for countries whose policies it does not agree with, engaging in illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing activities. Countries across the region want this behavior to change. We do too. That's why we're determined to ensure freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, where Beijing's aggressive actions there threaten the movement of more than $3 trillion worth of commerce every year.
President Joe Biden's administration is trying to reset relations and reassert its influence in Asia after the turbulence and unpredictability of the Donald Trump era. Blinken also said Washington wants to ensure peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait. U.S.-China tensions have soared over self-ruled Democratic Taiwan, which China claims as its territory and has vowed to retake one day by force if necessary. Blinken is seeking to highlight Southeast Asia's growing importance to U.S. foreign policy on this trip, even as his administration has to contend with myriad other crises from Iran to Russia. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has also reiterated its commitment to strengthen cooperation across the Indo-Pacific, particularly on maritime issues, which he stated after meeting with Indonesian Foreign Minister Retno Marsudi in Jakarta. Again, let's listen in.
We are deepening our cooperation on maritime issues, including maritime security, resource management and fisheries conservation, safety and navigation, economic activity, science and technology. In this region, where so much happens by sea, and particularly so much commerce happens by sea, and at a critical moment when the climate crisis threatens our oceans, our waterways, our coasts, marine life, cooperation on maritime issues is particularly vital, and I would argue more important than ever.
Meanwhile, China responded after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken urged China to cease aggressive actions in the Asia-Pacific, saying that U.S.'s attempts to provoke splits and misunderstandings will not work in the Asia-Pacific region. Again, let's listen in.
我想指出的是美方一方面渲染鼓吹所谓的中国威胁，一方面又表示无意同中国冲突。这种自相矛盾的做法，同中美元首会晤的精神不符，也难以得到地区国家的认同。如果美方真像其声称的那样，要为亚太地区和平发展发挥建设性作用的话，就应当切实尊重以东盟为中心的区域合作架构，而不是以意识形态划线、拼凑小圈子、挑动集团对抗。就应当尊重中国和东盟国家共同维护南海和平稳定的努力， 而不是频繁派舰机到南海炫耀武力、挑衅滋事。美方挑动分裂隔阂、煽动对立对抗的做法，在世界上不受欢迎，在亚太地区更加行不通。
China also said that the day of reckoning will come for the U.S. military after the Pentagon said that no U.S. troops or officials would face disciplinary action for a drone strike in August which killed 10 Afghan civilians, including 7 children in Kabul.
真像其声称的那样，要为亚。
Now here in the country, the Duterte administration will stand neutral during the May 2022 national elections. That, according to President Duterte on Monday. In a pre-recorded talk to the people, he made this assurance while giving a recap of his participation in the Summit for Democracy organized by the U.S. from December 9 to 10. Take a look.
At this early, I'd like to not just magbigay lang ng payo that when it comes to the elections, government, the administration, will stand neutral. Neither for or against kami, kalaban o kasama sa partido. We will participate in the exercise of that right, but we will see to it that there will be no terrorism, about buying, at intimidation and everything that would put a hindrance to an honest election.
Meanwhile, President Duterte also reiterated that he continues to regard China as a good friend, even if some do not share his sentiments. He, however, clarified that the Philippines' sovereign rights over the West Philippine Sea would not be compromised, even if China is the country's friend. Take a look.
Of the pandemic, na wala pa tayong bakuna noon. And I'd like to remind everybody that when everything was down for us, it was China. For whatever really is masabi nila about the relations about Philippines and China. I would maintain that we are good friends and they were the first one to give us the vaccines. Yung issues dyan sa West Philippines, ibang issue yan. At ibang issue na itong pagkakaibigan natin sa kanila.
Meanwhile, President Duterte also said as he steps down in June next year, it will be his highest honor to turn over the reins of power to his successor. Let's listen in.
Lastly, I said that as I step down in June 2022, it will be my highest honor to turn over the reins of power to my successor, knowing that in the exercise of my mandate, I did my best to serve the Filipino people.
Staying in the country exactly 2 weeks after announcing that he is pulling out of the presidential race, Senator Bongo has officially withdrawn his candidacy at the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC office in Manila this morning. Without fanfare, Go personally submitted his statement of withdrawal for the poll body's law department. The document was received at 10:46 in the morning, according to COMELEC records. Let's listen in.
As a matter of principle, sinabi ko naman po sa inyo na wala na po ako sa karerang ito, no, sa pagtakbo. At naghanap lang po ako ng tamang panahon. At yun naman po ang aking sinabi, na naghanap lang ako ng tamang panahon at pinapaintindi ko po sa aking mga supporters na talagang desidido na po ako. At ako po'y may isang salita. Kung ano po yung sinabi ko ay tutuparin ko po yan. Wala na po akong desidido. Naghahanap lang po ako ng tamang panahon. At sa totoo lang, ako nga lang mismo pumunta rito. Nagsumakay lang po ako ng taxi. Humingi po ako ng paumanhin sa mga supporters ko. Nandito naman po ako na handang magserbisyo pa rin po sa inyong lahat sa abot ng aking makakaya. At mahal na mahal ko po kayong lahat.
Asked who among the presidential contenders he will support in the May 9 2022 polls, Go said someone who can continue the programs of President Duterte. To recall, he originally filed his COC for vice president, but on November 13, he withdrew his first COC and filed a new one seeking for the highest post in the country, substituting Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back. Welcome back. The country has sufficient coronavirus vaccines with more than 24 million doses this week. That will add to the 64 million doses already in the stockpile. This week's deliveries will ensure the country has enough supplies until mid-2022. That according to the National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Secretary Carlito Galvez during his report to President Duterte's Talk to the People on Monday night. Let's listen in.
So makikita po natin, ang darating po na doses for this week is 24,473,800 doses. So ito po, Mr. President, ito po nag-a-assure na pwede na nating expand ang ating boosters. At the same time, yung sinasabi niyo po, Mr. President, na kumpleto na po yung ating vaccine up to the middle of the year of 2022. So ibig sabihin po, Mr. President, yung ating procurement and other donations, yung incoming president po, wala na pong problema sa vaccine dahil kasi yung ating ginagamit na vaccine, yung dinideliver po ngayon, para po na next year na po yon. Kasi yung 158 po yon, 108 lang ang kailangan natin for this year para sa 54 million. Yung na-deliver po natin doon, more or less 78 million. Ito po ilalaan na po natin to for next year, for the rest of our milestone.
Secretary Galvez also reported more than 41 million Filipinos are now fully protected against COVID-19, which equates to 53% of the targeted 70% of eligible individuals. China's economically important Zhejiang province wrestled today with a COVID outbreak that has caused some districts to shut down businesses and left hundreds of thousands of people facing quarantine or other restrictions. Zhejiang, a major industrial and export hub on the country's east coast, reported 44 of China's 51 domestically transmitted coronavirus cases today, bringing the total since late last week to nearly 200. Although Chinese case counts are minuscule compared to other major economies, officials in Zhejiang have employed the country's signature mass testing blitz and targeted lockdowns with concern high over fresh outbreaks as Beijing gears up to host the Winter Olympics in February. More than 70,000 people have been placed under some form of isolation in the province, while more than 465,000 face other restrictions, according to officials. Now, these may include health monitoring and bans on using public transportation or leaving their home districts. The problems in the province come as Chinese media reported on Monday that the country's first case of the fast-spreading Omicron variant had been identified in the northern port city of Tianjin. Meanwhile, Norway on Monday announced new COVID curbs less than a week after tightening restrictions amid the spread of the Omicron variant and soaring case numbers and hospital admissions. The move came after Norway's health authority warned that the country could record between 90,000 and 300,000 daily coronavirus cases and up to 200 hospital admissions per day in 3 weeks without more measures. Norway has registered record numbers of cases and hospital admissions in recent days, detecting 958 Omicron infections on Monday, of which 472 were in the capital, Oslo. Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Støre warned of a serious situation in which the Delta variant and the new highly transmissible Omicron strain would create a total saturation of the health system. Meanwhile, Danish health authorities say a third dose of the COVID-19 vaccine will be offered sooner to everyone over 40 to curb the spread of the Omicron variant. By reducing the interval of the doses, we will be able to enter the winter with better protection for those at increased risk of severe disease and increased immunity in the population, according to Director Søren Brostrøm. A third dose is safe and effective as soon as 3 months after the initial vaccine course, according to the European European Medicines Agency last week. Denmark also recorded a record number of new cases of COVID-19 on Monday, with 7,799 confirmed infections in the previous 24 hours. And authorities in California said they were reinstating mask mandates in all indoor public spaces to try to curb the resurgence of COVID-19 in recent weeks. The mask mandate, which will come into force Wednesday, applies to all individuals, whether vaccinated or not. Los Angeles, San Francisco, and other counties in California reintroduced the mask-wearing rule locally several months ago. But other counties, such as Orange and San Diego, which are very heavily populated, had stuck with statewide rules that masks only needed to be worn in certain public spaces such as airports, hospitals, or schools, but not in shops, restaurants, or cinemas. California's Health Secretary Mark Ghaly said the rapid rise in COVID cases had prompted the new rule, and there has been a 47% increase in cases since the Thanksgiving holiday at the end of November. Ghaly said that wearing a mask could help prevent a repeat of last winter's high rates of infection and death. Meanwhile, the NFL reported 37 positive COVID-19 tests across the league on Monday, according to ESPN, the largest single-day number of positive cases since the pandemic began. Los Angeles Rams cornerback Jalen Ramsey and tight end Tyler Higbee were among dozens of players who returned positive test results, ruling them out of Monday's crucial game against the Arizona Cardinals. Rams defensive star Ramsey later described his condition as fine, normal in a post on Twitter. Other players who have tested positive include Miami Dolphins running back Philip Lindsay, Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Cedric Wilson, and Kansas City Chiefs receiver Josh Gordon. In a separate development, the NFL Network reported that an employee with the Washington football team had tested positive for the Omicron variant of COVID-19. It's the first known case of the variant in the NFL. The Washington case involved a so-called Tier 3 employee who didn't have contact with playing, coaching, or backroom personnel. As of November 17, more than 94% of NFL players have been vaccinated, while nearly 100% of NFL personnel have also been vaccinated. And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back.
Pangarap ng bawat Pilipino, hangarin ng Northern Cement.
Ahon, bangon, sulong!
Pinalaki ng Northern Cement ang kapasidad ng kanilang planta para steady ang supply ng sementong tigasin. Northern Cement Max Plus, Supreme at Max Pro.
Ahon, bangon, sulong!
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
This week, we are going to do the chicken series. At meron ako sorpresa sa inyo dahil meron na akong guest ngayon. Ina Asisio. Yay!
Hi! Hi, Mother.
Ayan, pinahiwa ko po. So, kayo na pong bahala. Kung siya po yung tagaluto nyo, kayo na pong bahala. Shape ang pipiliin nyo. Lahat ng shape ginawa po niya. Buti na lang kami kakain ito.
Dahil napakalaki ng lalawigan ng Quezon, napakarami pang magagandang destinasyon dito ang hindi pa natin napapasyalan. At marami pang pagkain ang hindi pa natin natitikman. Kaya hindi pa rin natatapos ang ating pamamasyal. Tara, ating pasyalan ang bayan na nasa pinakadulong bahagi ng Quezon, ang San Andres. Yan at iba pa, dito lang sa Tara! Ating Pasyalan.
Sa Letters and Music, ngayong darating na linggo, December 19, 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. At syempre dito lamang yan sa Net25. See you!
Welcome back. The Asian Development Bank, or ADB, warned today that the highly mutated Omicron coronavirus variant could have a substantial economic impact as it trimmed its 2021 and 2022 growth forecast for developing Asia. Despite a sharp drop in infections and increased vaccination across the region, stretching from the Cook Islands in the Pacific to Kazakhstan in Central Asia, the global surge in COVID cases suggested the pandemic will take time to play it out. It said the Philippines-based lender forecast growth of 7% in 2021, compared with its previous prediction in September of 7.1% and 5.3% in 2022, down from its earlier forecast of 5.4%. While the region was expected to sustain a strong rebound and keep inflation at manageable levels, the ADB said the emergence of Omicron had brought additional uncertainty. In other business news, state-owned China Mobile has received approval to list publicly in Shanghai, according to documents, nearly a year after it was delisted in the U.S., along with two other Chinese telecom giants, as tensions between Beijing and Washington soared. China Mobile plans to issue up to 845.7 million shares, according to a prospectus released on the Shanghai Stock Exchange website on Tuesday, in a move that could raise around $5 billion based on the last closing price of its Hong Kong listed shares. The firm was delisted in the U.S. along with China Telecom and China Unicom in January, following an executive order by former President Donald Trump. The order banned Americans from investing in a range of companies deemed to be supplying or supporting China's military and security apparatus. Funds raised will go towards building 5G infrastructure, as well as smartphone projects and other initiatives, according to the company. No date for the debut was provided. Shares of China Telecom, the country's biggest fixed-line operator, debuted in Shanghai in August in a listing that raised $7.3 billion. Amid criticism over the removal of the portraits of three Filipino World War II heroes from the design of the new $1,000 banknote, Malacanang today assured the old bills would remain in circulation. Citing the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, or BSP acting presidential spokesperson, Cabinet Secretary Carlo Nograles said the new 1,000 peso banknotes that featured the Philippine Eagle would only be released as part of a test for its possible adoption. Take a look.
Actually, nasagot na po ito ng BSP at gaya ng sinabi ng BSP Governor Joko, ang sinabi naman niya na yung 1,000 peso bill natin that shows the faces ng ating heroes and martyrs na si Jebad Santos, si Vicente Lim, Josefa Llanes Escoda ay mananatiling in circulation naman po. At itong bagong 1,000 peso bill featuring yung Philippine Eagle po, yan po ay yung polymer series po natin. Nagagawa naman po ng BSP as test circulation din para malaman natin at ma-validate po natin kung totoo nga yung polymer is more hygienic, more environmentally friendly, and more secure kesa sa mga dating nating ginagamit na materials for our peso bills. So, hindi po ma-monetize ang ating 1,000 peso bills featuring our three national heroes and martyrs. Ito lamang ay yung featuring yung Philippine Eagle ay for test station lamang po to test the polymer material.
In other business news, Toyota President Akio Toyoda announced that the automaker aims to sell 3.5 million electric vehicles per year from the next decade, nearly doubling the Japanese auto giant's existing target as part of efforts to drive down carbon emissions. Take a look.
私たちは2030年にバッテリー EV のグローバル販売台数で年間350万台を目指します。
今度電動車全体という見方をすると、バッテリー EV 以外にもですね、ここにハイブリッド、それからプラグインハイブリッド FCV とありますけれども、ここでもやはり4兆円規模の投資ということで、構えとしてはこのぐらいのものが必要なんではないだろうかということで、合計8兆円規模の投資を先ほどの基準という前提で言うならば構えさせていただいております。
Toyota will also aim to make its high-end Lexus range 100% electric by the end of the decade in the European, North American, and Chinese markets, and worldwide by 2035. The company announced a total investment of 8 trillion yen or $70 billion for its electrification drive by 2030, and half of that will be used for battery-powered electric vehicles, with the other half poured into other projects, including hybrids and fuel cell engines. Around 2 trillion yen will be dedicated to the production and development of auto batteries, up from the previous amount of 1.5 trillion yen.
And computers.
And finally, in our news, EBC correspondent in Milan, Italy, Jasmine Jamora, takes us on a tour of Milan's Chinatown. Take a look.
Milans Chinatown, known in Italian as Quartiere Cinese, is the oldest and biggest Chinese district in Italy. Whether you're planning to stay in town for a long period or just a few days, a stroll through this multi-ethnical area is a curious way of discovering the less-known insights of Milan. This vibrant and dynamic area is located just a few steps away from some of the significant venues of Milan, such as the historical city center and the futuristic buildings of Porta Nuova district. Milan's Chinese neighborhood is an interesting location for a quiet walk or to take a look at the typical products displayed at the shiny windows at both sides of the road. Boasting more than 150 stores among boutiques selling Oriental products, traditional tea shops, a department store, and even the biggest store for ethnic food in Italy, the Paolo Sarpi area is a career spot for shopping. Jewelries, fashion boutiques, ethnic homeware shops, wine houses, opticians, beauticians, and computer shops are just some of the stores you can find while strolling through the street. Small shops selling important typical made-in-China products are scattered around the main streets of the district. Many of its visitors are mainly attracted by its vast array of traditional delicacies from the Far East, which can be tasted both at local restaurants, street food hubs, or purchased at specialized shops. When it comes to food, the Chinese district features a variety of choices satisfying any taste whim. From breakfast until dinner time, guests can enjoy both traditional Italian products as well as taste a selection of delicacies from the Far East that range from noodle to steamed or fried dumplings. The Sarpi area boasts many small street food laboratories selling small takeaway delicacies. One of these is the Ravioleria Sarpi, a tiny one-window shop serving traditional handmade vegetarian or meat dumplings, perfect to be eaten on the go, prepared using high-quality meat coming from the nearby Macelleria Sirtori. Take advantage of your visit to Chinatown to savor the characteristic bubble tea, a typical sweet beverage from Taiwan, which can be tasted in different varieties. While planning a visit to Chinatown, visitors might take into account moving around with public transports, by bike or on foot, as many streets in the district are limited traffic areas and don't allow access by car. The area can be reached via underground, via bus, and by tram. Those enjoying a quiet wander by bike can take advantage of the Bike Me sharing. An efficient taxi service is also available to quickly reach the chosen location with a traffic limitation. I hope you enjoyed this little tour around Milan's Chinatown. I am Jasmine Jamora for EBC Bureau Italy, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Jasmine. I enjoyed that a lot. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you all for joining us. I'm Alma Angeles. And as I always say, at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. Good night.
This program is supported by Northern Cement Max Plus, Supreme at Max Pro Northern Cement, Ahon, Bangon, Sulong, and SMC Global Power.
Napapansin ba ninyo lumiliwanag ang mundo pag magkasama tayo? Life is so much sweeter, everything feels better pag tayong lahat ay together. Let's have fun together, let's play together, kumain, magluto, matuto together, tawanan together, hawak kamay together, we'll be there for each other, we're stronger together. Kaya tara na Filipino, let's get together, let's all come alive. Kaya tara na Filipino, let's get together, Sunday 25, Sunday 25. Let's stay together, let's sing together, let's all work together, mag-travel together, let's shop together, mga